at the end of the book, you go through a list of helpful to-dos. Everyday resistance, information libraries, meaningful further regulation and transparency and disclosure. I'm leafing through here what I read last night. Building socially situated technology, strategic refusal, like earlier. The grimy residue of the AI bubble, which I quite like. What's going to happen to this economy? NVIDIA's, as we speak, NVIDIA's going down because Huawei is doing a competitive chip. So those are your very helpful suggestions. I want to ask you about the one that we keep hearing in this discussion. That, and full disclosure, or I'll just let you know that I'm dubious about this myself, is this idea of building in guardrails. The idea that you can make these systems to align with human goals. Again, when they have no sense of meaning, how can they have any sense of ethics? Seems to be obvious. Yeah. And then I wrote a book called The Gutenberg Parenthesis, because I'll plug mine too. And I think back to the printing press as a general machine. Anybody could make it do anything, and you couldn't tell Gutenberg, well, you can do this, but just make sure you keep it away from Luther, right? Just see in the future. So there seems to be, as the one hand you have the doomer side, you also have a false comfort in the idea that these alleged, air quotes, safety people at the various companies can build in guardrails and alignment. And that drives me bananas when I hear it. So I'd love to get your arguments to get that, because I know you have them. And I seem to fail at trying to get people to latch on to the futility of that. So I've revealed my views clearly.
All right. So you'll notice that in our chapter 7, where we have suggestions of what to do, guardrails aren't among them, right?
Exactly.
We do talk about regulation.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, and there is this thing, and we get into this earlier in the book, about the notion of a general purpose technology. And I think that the difference between something like the printing press, or sometimes people will say electricity is a general purpose technology, but electricity is a natural phenomenon. The technologies of electricity are things like wires and transistors and switches, right? And each of those things has a specific function that it does that you can use in many different ways. Can't talk about the specific function of AI because it's not one thing, but if we drill down into the synthetic text extruding machines, the specific function that they do is continually provide a response to what's a likely next word. Right. So what's that good for? And you're absolutely right that the idea is that we can somehow align its outputs so that the likely next words are likely next words that are good in some generally accepted sense makes no sense at all. Right. It's basically a category error. I think where we do need guardrails is on the activities of corporations. Right. That's laws. That's regulation. And anytime someone is talking about alignment or misalignment, they're basically displacing accountability from the companies that are making decisions, usually based on the profit motive, to this thing that is not the sort of thing that can actually take accountability for anything.
Well, isn't it also true that all right, if they say, yes, you have Anthropic says we're the safe one, and you have I forget who it was who left left OpenAI and starting
Ilya Sutskever,
right, safe superintelligence, right?
Yeah.
So which is a whole bunch of hypey.
I would too like $2 billion, not to build God.
Yeah. Well said. But the companies can't. You see, so we hold them accountable, but we also have to be sensible about what we could hold them accountable to, and recognize what they cannot do, because they act as if they are all powerful, and they are not. So part of the problem, there's so many paradoxes in this world, where in a way we've got to reveal their lack of power.
Right, exactly. So companies can be accountable for data practices. They can be accountable for labor practices, and they could be made accountable for every single output that comes from their machines. If it extrudes something that someone takes as bad medical advice, well, then they're medically liable for that, right? If it extrudes something that ends up being libel, well, then we could get them like.
But I'm saying they couldn't do that. There's no way you could anticipate every possible use.
No, absolutely not. I'm saying
Right.
we can make them accountable for it. So whatever the machine spits out, the company that set up the machine is accountable for it. That's the kind of thing that we could do with the right political will.
And I would also say that, the notion, there's so many problems with alignment as kind of the idea behind alignment is the kind of pipe dream here is that, well, there's a way in which these things have a certain set of autonomy and that autonomy of these inevitable machines means that they have to be kind of good independent actors in the world, which is, I'm like, well, that's already granting too much credulousness into
Yes.
where these things are going to go, right? As if
Exactly.
these are not programs running on servers, and I think the vision is that someday they're going to be self-replicating or XYZ. And that's just, no, this is software. We don't think this about calculators, and we don't think this about image generators or whatnot. I mean, this is software, and people ought to be accountable for when their software goes wrong or does things. And I mean, I think that was a big part of an effort that Dare was involved in trying to get in the EU AI Act some kind of a accountability mechanism for the providers of people who were creators of LLMs. Basically, like, you cannot say that it's just the facial recognition or the things in hiring, which are high risk. These things are not quote unquote foundational, which is terminology comes directly from Stanford. I mean, no one was using that term before Stanford HAI was saying it. They are not foundational in any kind of way that they undergird other technology. These things will produce the harmful output, and these companies need to take responsibility for it.